All right, welcome everyone to the another set of the Mafia Scum Super League matches, Trimester 1. Today we're going to have a match between Cow playing Infect and Yaw playing Grixis thing. And I will throw it over to the casters for today's match, Pseudonym and Kelvester.
Yo,
Hey, so today we've got Cow and Yaw squaring off. Cow's using a pretty fast Infect green, black, blue deck. Then we've got Yaw with some Grixis deck.
Grixis thing in the ice, to be fair.
Grixis thing in the ice. Very graveyard, somewhat graveyard heavy.
Well, any deck with Snapcaster Mage. All right, so quick look at the deck lists. We've got Cows up first, I believe, and he's playing a fairly standard Infect deck post Gataxian Probe. Uh, Infect is basically just charged into the red zone with your Infect creatures because the poison counters win at 10 instead of 20, and they're a lot harder to heal off, by which I mean probably impossible. So it basically just cuts your opponent's life total in half.
Now, does Cow have much for card fixing or late game?
Uh, Not a ton, but he doesn't really need it. Uh, Cow's deck is all about trying to get fast, so he's aiming for turn 2, turn 3, turn 4 wins at the latest. If the game goes longer than that, he'll probably be in some trouble. So,
Absolutely. Cow
yep,
has a lot of really, really fast wins because he only needs to deal 10 infect damage.
right. Although, in theory, he can go long. He's got Inkmoth Nexus, which is, being a manland, is fairly resilient. He's got things like Blossoming Defense, Apostle's Blessing, Distortion Strike, so in theory, he can put together a late win if he has to. But basically, he wants to win before Yaw can set up on him.
Yep, that's a pretty straightforward deck right there. Now let's want to move on to Yaw's deck.
Sure enough.
I seem to have muted Sense Fan. Huh. I'll worry about that later.
Well, no worries. So, Jaws is basically Grixis thing in the ice. He's trying to get down. Uh, thing in the ice, he's trying to flip it. He's trying to charge in. He's got a fairly fast deck as well, which is interesting because control or aggro on aggro matchups turn into kind of ersatz control decks, and where you're struggling for board position. And Grixis with the lightning bolts and the cryptic commands and the thing in the ice's flip ability would seem to have the advantage in that sense, at the
Yo,
cost of being not quite as fast as Infect is.
yeah, Yaw's definitely slower, but Yaw's got a nice variety of control. He's got Lightning Bolt, he's got Fatal Push, he's got couple Terminates, he's got Kolaghan's Command, he's got Mana Leak, he's got Spell Snare, he's got some things that can slow down a fast deck.
Right,
But if,
he's got more answers in his main than Cow is running, because Cow is just trying to get the kill as fast as he can, and he's relying on his pump spells for protection, and that's about it.
right, we'll have to see whether Yaw has enough answers to keep the board clean until Yaw can get something big on the board.
Right, and one of the more interesting interactions that I want to point out before we go is that thing in the ice's flip ability on Awoken Horror uh, bounces all non-horror creatures to hand, and that's actually not a targeted ability. So none of Cow's pump, none of Cow's Apostle's Blessings and the like can actually protect from that. So it'll be interesting to see if Yaw notices and decides to take advantage of that on defense.
Yeah, Cow does not have very much control, so if Yaw can put that together, then he'll be good to go.
Right. Yaw has more interaction, but Cow has more explosive starts. So it should be interesting to see what happens. And with that, I think we're about ready to go. So unless you got more to add.
Let's see how these two pair off.
Indeed. So Yaw's won the flip, and he will be playing to start the game. All right, so looking at Yaw's hands first, he's got Pia, he's got Kalidas, he's got Terminate and Mana Leak, and then some lands. That gives him some early interaction, but it's fairly slow to actually get a threat down on his own. That could be problematic because if Yaw Cow has plenty of like 1 mana threats that he can get down, and then once they're down, they tend to be hard to answer with things like Terminate because of the protection. Although it might just be good enough if Cow doesn't have enough protection.
Yeah, Yaw definitely. If Cow lacks a turn 1 play, then Yaw has enough to keep the board clear for a couple more turns, though he needs a second black or red land to play either of the bigger cards in his hand right now. With that, wonder what Cow has in his hand.
Cow looks like he's got the Noble Hierarch on 1 and the Blighted Agent on 2. He's also got the Inkmoth Nexus. So he's got a couple of Infect threats, including one that's not counterable. That may be good enough. He's got 2 Mutagenic Growths for pump. The Noble Hierarch doubles as both ramp and pump, so that could be useful. But it is not going to be quite as explosive as Infect is capable of being.
It'll be interesting to see whether Yaw keeps his Terminate or not long enough to hit the Inkmoth, to see the Inkmoth Nexus hit the board.
Right. It'll be interesting to see how he chooses to answer the threats, because he's got Mana Leak that can counter the Blighted Agent, but Inkmoth Nexus can only be answered by Terminate. And he knows that Cow's deck runs Apostle's Blessing, so Terminate may or may not be good. So we'll see how he chooses to play that. He does have the Kalidas and the Pia and Kieran, which are going to be difficult for Infect to deal with if they actually do come down. Kalidas' lifelink is almost entirely irrelevant in this matchup, but it can still be used to grind out if he can stabilize the board.
Yeah, Pyrrha and Kieran are a little slower, but if Pyrrha and Kieran can actually hit the board and stick, they'll give you a lot of control over Cow.
Yeah, looks like they've both decided to keep, so y'all get us started. Y'all just drop a land, no surprises. Kyle gets another protection / pump and finds a Fastwood. Wouldn't be surprised to see him just fetch a basic forest here to play out the Noble Hierarch. But, I mean, he can get a shock land if he really wants to, since his life total is more or less irrelevant in this match.
There you go, we got a basic forest, and there's the Noble Hierarch.
As expected. Not playing the full art forests because he's a monster. But other than that, no surprises.
And Yaw's got another Mana Leak.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does here, because I think he's going to be expecting a Blighted Agent or something to come down next turn. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him hold open these Mana Leaks to try to counter it. And it looks like that's exactly what he's going to do.
Now, is this a situation where you would terminate at end of turn if the board were, if nothing were played to remove the mana base?
No, I don't think he's all that worried about a noble hierarch because he can answer it more easily with a thing in the ice to block. So I wouldn't be at all concerned about this hierarch if I were in y'all's shoes. But we're just going to see the mana leak on the blighted agent as expected. Yeah, basically exactly what was expected. So we'll get the noble hierarch to smash in for one. This is sort of Infect's secret backup win con, where they just try to swing in with some stuff like noble hierarch, and they've got enough pumps, so in theory they can do 20, although that's not how they want to go about it.
Well, you all got rid of the Noble Hierarch another way with that lightning bolt he just drew.
Yeah, he's still got mana leak open, and Cal hasn't shown him an Inkmoth Nexus yet, so it's not surprising that he's just going to do this and hold open answers for things he's more afraid of.
And there, y'all got lucky playing it when he did.
Yeah, I think that was the right line in this case.
Because Blossoming Defense would have saved it otherwise.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you have to expect that they have things like Blossoming Defense and Apostle's Blessing, and I don't think you can really afford to play around them in this matchup. You just kind of have to play your answers as they come.
Well, y'all played Serum Visions. That'll let him draw a card and then scry 2. Good efficient card fixing there. Everyone with space could afford to run a playset of Serum Visions.
Yeah, basically any blue deck.
Yaw has drawn a Thought Scour. As Yaw sports Snapcaster Mages and Thing in the Ice, it's helpful to have cards in his graveyard as well as cards in his library.
As we saw in the matchup against Death Note's mill deck.
Though it's interesting, Yaw does not have nearly as much graveyard play as he could. He really just has a couple of his Kalidas and Liliana, and then Snapcaster Mages as far as direct graveyard play.
Well, he's not really going all in on the grindy aspect like Grixis is capable of. He really just is playing more of a thing in the ice deck with control backup from the Grixis, so wouldn't be all that surprising. Spellskite for Cow here. A neat way to absorb removal spells that will, in addition to Blossoming Defense, we'll see if he chooses to just play it out here.
Spellskite is a really phenomenal honey utility creature. I have it in my sideboard. It's really great at keeping your other creatures safe.
Well, such is its purpose. Yeah, basically any aggro deck that fears removal, like Infect does, is going to want some Spellskites just to screw with the opponent's suite.
Ooh, and Cow swings with an Inkmoth Nexus, possibly going to give Yaw the first Infect counter of the match. Are we going to see a Terminate?
This would be the optimal target. We'll see if Yaw fears the one Infect damage, though. Appears he doesn't. He'll just take the poison.
What Yaw does not see is that Cow is out of mana in his hand, so Yaw would have had the potential to mana screw Cow and leave him with only 2 land. Oh, but what's this? Wait, what? Why did he terminate? Oh,
This is
that
a
makes
common
sense.
strategy again. This is a common strategy against Infect decks. Is that if they don't pump their creatures pre-combat, you save your removal for afterwards. So that way, things like Vines of the Vastwood and Blossoming Defense don't actually apply to the damage step. It's a neat way to save yourself a few poison counters, which can be critical over the long run.
So it's interesting to see Cal playing around Terminate by leaving mana open for Vines of Vastwood after attacking with his Inkmoth Nexus.
Yeah, that's fairly common. I think if he had one more mana there, he would have just played out the Spellskite. But because he's stuck on 3, he wants 1 to activate the Inkmoth, and then 1 can hold open Blossoming Defense or Vines of Vastwood. That's also an interesting play because Cow is capable of playing out 8 points of pump in addition to Inkmoth's 1/1. So he can deal 9 poison in 1 turn if Yaw has no answer.
That is incredible. 9. Wait, let me. Oh, yeah, he has 1, 2, 3 mutagenic growths in hand, and then a blossoming defense.
Indeed. And here's the P and Kieran, which will give Inkmoth Nexus some trouble because those Thopters do fly, so they can block the Nexus. So, I mean, this can buy him a few turns and can waste some pump if the Cow tries to bludgeon his way through them.
Yeah, flying on those Ornithopters is definitely saving Yaw. And there we see a Might of Old Krosa, which pumps Inkmoth Nexus up to 5/5. Now, why would they pump? Yeah, why would Cal pump Inkmoth all the way up to 5/5 when he sees that the Thopters can just block anyway?
Well, he has to get his way through the Thopters one way or the other, or he's not going to win. So
he could have pumped up to 3/3 though.
Doesn't
with
really
the
matter all that
mutagenic.
much, does it?
Save the extra +2/+2 for an attack that's a little more likely to succeed. Although
He
at this
doesn't have
point,
to do that. He's already got enough pump in hand that he can win on the spot if the Inkmoth gets through. So saving the pump doesn't matter.
he has
So
enough
he might as well
pump in hand. He doesn't have enough mana in hand.
Mutagenic growths cost a cast for 2 life, so he might as well just play the Might of Old Krasaw that costs 1 mana regardless, and then he can play the mutagenic growths for basically free later on when he can actually get an attack through.
Fair enough, and then he's got 1 green for his blossoming defense.
Right. Basically, you play the pump that costs you mana so that you can alpha spike with all these mutagenic growths when you can actually get through. And since he was going to pump one way or the other, he might as well just play out the Might of Old Krasaw.
There we see Yaw play another Serum Visions.
Yeah, he's just digging for more cantrips, basically. He wants as many answers as he can find.
He does leave 3 mana open so that he can sack a Thopter if need be.
Yeah, that's an interesting play here because it means that he can shoot Inkmoth Nexus. He also has the mana leak, so we might see Cow play out his Dismember so that he can't shoot with the Thopter, but then he's out of mana. So it's going to be an interesting to see what line Cow tries here.
Yeah, Cal could play 1 mana for the Dismember and then have enough for a Nexus that strikes for 7. Ooh, but he plays a Spellskite.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going to try to blunt Yaw's removal by either forcing out a mana leak here or by forcing out another Terminate if Yaw has one, or forcing the redirect on the shots. It's not quite clear from Cow's perspective, except that he knows he's got to get some removal out of Yaw's hand.
And Yaw cannot see that spell say.
Yeah. Basically, that's the number one way Yaw loses from here, is if he can't remove an Inkmoth Nexus or a Blighted Agent or something. So getting rid of the spell guide is probably necessary.
This is the kind of exciting game that I've really been looking for in these matchups. Really, something like a really fast aggressive deck versus a combination control type deck. Or a control type deck using a combination of different ways to control.
Yeah, Yaw's deck is, in theory, aggressive because he's trying to get down the thing in the ice and attack. But, he has to play the control role here. And I think we'll see that become more pronounced in Game 2 after sideboarding.
Does Yaw have mana for Kalidas? Not yet.
No, it looks like he's... Oh, no, he's got...
Oh, he does. He does.
So he can.
Though does he have mana? He even has mana for Kalidas, and then he can keep red up for Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, the Infect deck doesn't play mass removal. So, he's not really in any fear of just playing out his threats as he draws them.
Oh, he's going in for the kill now.
Yeah, Dismember on the Thopter because he knows basically against Yaw's board he's going to have to get this Inkmoth Nexus to go in. And like noted, he's got the 9 points of pump in hand, so he does have a win here. And there's not really a whole lot Yaw can do to answer it. Because his only removal is Lightning Bolt, which doesn't do anything against pump.
Or the combo. That's what you'll see. That's what'll happen if you have 3 mutagenic growths in hand, though.
Yeah, this is one of the things about Phyrexian mana is that Cow is just going to take this win from out of nowhere, and there's not really anything Yaw can do about it with no blockers.
Yeah, if Yaw had some kind of bounce or something, he could make it through, but I think Yaw might be finished.
Right, this is one of the classic things you see from Infect decks, is that they have a lot of resilient things like Inkmoth Nexus that are difficult to answer, and they also got a lot of pump that blanks a lot of removal like Lightning Bolt. And so they can often just sneak through wins like this, even when they appear to be far behind on board.
This is complete robbery.
Yeah, but this is the sort of thing that you expect from Infect decks, and Yaw will almost certainly be boarding in more control elements in Game 2 to try to prevent this sort of thing from happening. But you basically saw Infect's game plan there against control-y style decks like Yaw has, which is just draw out all their answers, and then when they can't answer, you just charge in for the win. It's classic.
Seems like the players are taking their due caution, though.
Right. Well, you can't just resolve everything right away because Yaw's deck does have control magic in it, so Cow has to check after each spell. But, we can see from Yaw's hand that he's got no answers to this.
Now,
he doesn't play any 0 mana answers, so even this Thought Scour doesn't help him at all.
Now, this is another situation. Yaw's deck has a lot of variety, but it has a lot going on in it too. And some things that Yaw's Yaw, for example, only has room for 2 Thought Scours, for 3 Ancestral Visions, for 2 Colligan's Command.
Hold on. So it turns out we were not paying attention to life totals because Cal was at 3 life, so the lightning bolt is actually enough to win the game. Had Cal had one more life, this would have been his game, but unfortunately he was in lightning bolt range, and we were not paying attention.
So Cal burned himself down with too much Phyrexian mana from the mutagenics, and Yaw got a win out of that.
Yeah, so yeah, that's part of the play. Wish I would have been paying more attention, but Phyrexian mana will do that to you, which is not common, but what are you going to expect? So sideboarding. Cow, I'm not quite sure what he brings in here. Probably more spell skites, maybe kitchen finks, maybe Grafdigger's Cage. Dispels and spell pierces could be good shouts. He's got a lot of options here, so it depends on whether he wants to bring in more counter magic to try to fight Yaw's counter magic and removals, or if he just wants to try to keep his deck list tight and try to race. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him just bring in just the spell spears, the spells and spell skites to try to negate Yaw's removal, and then just leave the rest of it alone.
Yeah, Yaw, I could see Yaw's boarding pretty heavily on the other hand.
Right, he wants probably the dispels and the negates to try to blunt the pump as much as he can, and also to fight through the spell pierces and dispels that he probably expects. Damnation is probably too slow, but it could be a good way to remove since it doesn't care about Hexproof or Apostle's Blessing or anything like that. And he can't
Rakdos, Boom Bust and Rakdos Charm might both. What do you think about those?
Rakdos Charm, I would probably stay away from. I don't think it's all that great. Boom Bust, however, could be a very good answer to the Inkmoth Nexus, since it can be very difficult to remove when it's because Yaw or Cow has all sorts of pump and protection when it's in creature mode, but there's not really a whole lot you can do to protect it when it's in land mode. So Boom can take that out. And he's probably not all that afraid of destroying his own land since he's got plenty and he's got a fairly low curve. Most of the rest of these, Vendilion Click maybe to try to blunt Cow's draws. Is it Static Caster? It could in theory answer a lot of things because a lot of Cow's stuff only has 1 health. So that could be a thing.
Yeah, that Vendilion Click would definitely be a choice of mine for this. Just being able to control Cow's hand like that, plus a 3/1 flying body, is nothing to laugh at.
Right, especially since he knows Cow isn't playing a whole ton of removal and it flies, so it can block an Inkmoth Nexus if necessary, and it's also a fairly fast clock, and it's a lot less grindy than, say, a Kalidas, so it might make for a better threat in this matchup.
What are your thoughts on Goblin Dark Dwellers? That is an interesting card.
Interesting. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, it's cost 5 mana, which I think is just too much in this matchup. I think you want to keep your curve low because you're trying to interact with Infect as fast as possible.
Right, you are. So although y'all can recast a spell with it, it's just a little slow. It looks like our players are back to ready. They're all sideboarded and ready to go with round 2, though.
Yeah, looks like they're ready to go. So we'll go ahead and go in, I guess. All right. Cal will be playing first, which is no surprise. Looking at a 7, he's got the Glistener Elf on turn 1, which is exactly what you want in this deck. He's got Spell Pierce for some counter magic protection. He's got Blossoming Defense for some protection. Blighted Agent as a backup just in case, although I don't think we'll see the Blighted Agent come down. Unfortunately, outside of the Blossoming Defense, he doesn't really have any pump, which is going to make his clock really slow if he doesn't draw into something good.
On the other, yeah, Cow's definitely got a keeper of a hand though. Great land distribution, couple threats.
Yeah, he's got all the land he needs in hand, though. I wouldn't be surprised to see a mulligan and try to get a hand with some more pump in, but he's got a couple threats. He's got some protection. So he might just decide to keep and try to draw into pump.
Yaw, on the other hand, Yaw's got a toughie. Oh, wait. Oops, there's a polluted delta. I did not see that before. Yaw's got a pretty great hand himself. He's got a Vendilion Cleek, he's got a Mana Leak, he's got a Thought Scour, and he's got a Terminate. So he has some fixing, plus he has strong, fast control base, and he's got one of his Vendilions he can drop on turn 3.
Yeah, he's got some interaction, which is going to be nice. Obviously he doesn't know that Cowd has no pump, but he does have the protection just in case. He's got some draw he can hold on to. He's got a Cleek that can screw with Cow's draws as he tries to get the pump he needs, and also will serve as a fairly efficient clock against a deck full of Phyrexian mana. So I wouldn't be surprised to see both players keep, but I mean, I think Cow's hand is mulliganable if you're into that sort of thing.
Do you think we can let them mulligan? I guess you do.
Yeah, no surprises. They're both going to keep. So I'm fairly certain we're going to see Cow drop this Glistener Elf right away and then hope to draw into some pump.
Ooh, that hand, Cow's looking at a hand with no blue mana, but
Well, Cow's doing fine. He's got the fetch lands.
There he
He
is.
can just shock himself. It's fine.
There he is.
No surprise, Glistener Elf turn 1.
Ooh, Yar got one of his creeping tar pits. I wonder why he would not run 4 creeping tar pits. That is a really aggressive card. It can put people on a pretty quick clock, especially combined with a
I think it
Vendilion
doesn't
Cleek.
interact very well with Yaw's curve. Yaw plays a fairly low curve because he wants to get his threats down, and he wants to protect them with the backup. So he wants lands that don't come into play tapped whenever he can get them. And Creeping Tar Pit is more of a backup plan than an actual consistent threat in this deck.
Right, that makes sense.
And the swing for 1, which, I mean, Yaw doesn't really have any choice but to allow. Ink Moth, which will help out in the future, probably.
Play the Vacant comes down. Yaw's lucky that Cow only has one buff in hand right now, because this is really close to the road to being game already. These Infect decks are fast.
Yeah, he's got 3 threats down. He's got a Blossoming Defense. Most of Yaw's removal is 1 for 1. So he'll probably just hold on to this Blossoming Defense to counter whatever removal Yaw attempts.
Unless he can get an... Oh, there, he has more lands. Does he have more lands? Yeah, he has a Windswept Teeth, so next turn he'll be able to support an Ink Moth and a Blossoming Defense.
Yeah, he's not hurting for lands at all. He's probably got more lands than he really wants at this point, because he would rather draw up about 3 lands than just draw a pump in for the rest of the game if he had this option.
Yeah, Yaw's just in a kind of tough position, not only because of all these extra lands, but because he's facing so many threats on the board, and he can only remove one at a time.
Yeah, that's probably going to be a problem for Yaw if Cow really gets rolling. It's just that he's got 3 threats down, and he can spend his pump on whichever he likes. but Yaw's removal is really only 1-for-1, so he can always spend it on something that Yaw isn't targeting. Yeah, he's just going to drop an end turn, so he's holding up his Terminate and his Mana Leak here. There's a second Blossoming Defense, which is almost certainly going to come in real handy. And I think the line here is he's just going to drop either this Force or this Windswept Teeth, get out his lands, activate the Inkmoth Nexus, swing in, and then Blossoming Defense if Yaw tries to remove anything.
Yeah.
No Inkmoth activation. He's just going to hold up. Probably Blossoming Defense and Spell Pierce, just to be on the very safe side.
Yep, he doesn't want to take any chances. But next turn, he'll have it sealed, unless Yaw can counter it.
Yeah, Yaw's just going to take the poison here. I don't think he's worried about taking this chip damage. I think he's trying to prevent the Alpha Strike like Cow attempted last turn. So he's probably just going to take here and terminate on the Blighted Agent. Again, this is the same thing we saw last turn, where he's trying to force Cow to use stuff like Apostle's Blessing or Vines of Vastwood post-combat so that he's only getting the protection and not the pump. But the Spell Pierce is going to counter that anyway.
Yaw has played an island. It's back to Cow again.
Yeah, now Yaw is looking at this Kolaghan's Command and Mana Leak as his only options to try to prevent anything, and Mana Leak is probably not going to be super useful because he's already got his threats down, and Kolaghan's Command is, of course, countered by Blossoming Defense.
We've got mana down for 2 Blossoming Defenses or a Blossoming Defense. Oh, yeah, 2 Blossoming Defenses, so this is going to be rough for Yaw.
Right. Technically, Cow has lethal here, or he can try for lethal if he wants to, with these Blossoming Defenses. Because he's got three down, 3 Infect on the board, and then 4 points of pump, so for 10. So we'll see if he decides to try it.
He would see one of them get mana leaked.
Right. He can Mana Leak one, but not the other. And I don't know that attempting to fight Blossoming Defenses is exactly where Yaw wants to be in this match. But it looks like Cow's going to play it safe, and he's just going to take he's just going to hold up the Blossoming Defenses to counter the removal.
Oh, and there's a... Oh, that's going to hurt. Kolaghan's Command is one of the best cards Yaw can have in this matchup.
Right. In this case, he's using it to destroy the Inkmoth Nexus, which is an artifact, and to deal 2 to the Blighted Agent, which will remove 2 of Cow's threats right away. We'll see a Blossoming Defense to protect Blighted Agent, and we'll see if he chooses to protect the Inkmoth Nexus as well.
Is it worth another Blossoming Defense?
I don't think it is. I think he wants to save the other Blossoming Defense for next turn and maybe get a win that way, or protect from whatever the next piece of removal is. So he's just going to protect the Blighted Agent and then let the Inkmoth Nexus die. And we'll
Serum
see.
Visions.
Yeah. Yaw's in a fairly bad place for himself, just because he's low on removal. Like, he doesn't have any removal left. He just has this Mana Leak. and now he's got the Snapcaster Mage, but he can't afford to snap back Kolagons or Terminate. So it could be fairly tricky, depending on how Cow decides to play it next turn. And especially since he doesn't have the Lightning Bolt the face out like he had last game.
Looks like Yaw is pondering.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to look for anything he can do to protect from these creatures, trying to find more removal or anything to try to stop the Infect count, because he's already at 6 with 2 on board, so he knows any pump spell from Cow could be game.
Whoa.
Looks like we got a timeout called for. Yeah, so Yaw accidentally passed the turn, but he didn't intend to.
It looked like Yaw wanted to play a land first and then pass his turn. So
yeah, it looks like he's planning to click, because he doesn't have enough in hand to actually destroy any of these Infect creatures. So he's probably just going to try to click here on Cow's draw step and try to shuffle away some pump spells. Yeah, he's going to, on the attack, he's going to flash in Snapcaster Mage. Mostly just to block, I think.
what's Yaw have in his graveyard that could... Yeah, Yaw could use...
Got Fatal Push in there that flipped off a Thought Scour, so that could be something he tries. So he's going to try to block one with Snapcaster Mage, and then probably try to, then he's going to probably Fatal Push the other one.
Yep, that blocks both of the attackers. We've got Blossoming Defense. Do you think we'll see a Fatal Push?
No, because what happened here is that Snapcaster Mage targets the Fatal Push, but before that ability resolves, Cow gets priority, so he can use it to to cast the Blossoming Defense in response before push gets flashback. So he can't block Blighted Agent with the Snapcaster Mage, and the Blossoming Defense means he can't target the Blighted Agent with Fatal Push this turn either. And then at end of turn, the flashback wears off, and then.
Whoa! Now, why is Yaw having a Snapcaster Mage block the Glistener Elf instead of Fatal Pushing the Glistener Elf?
Presumably, he wants to save the Fatal Push in his graveyard and just block what he can, because he doesn't really actually value the body on the Snapcaster Mage all that much outside of using it as a chump block.
Given that he has 9 poison counters, I would think that the chump block would be valuable.
Right, but he was chump blocking anyway, and all of Yaw's threats, or all of Cow's threats, can be Fatal Pushed anyway, and the Blighted Agents can't actually be blocked. So he probably wants to keep the Fatal Push in his graveyard so he can snap it back and try to Fatal Push one of the Blighted Agents on the next turn. Because he can chump block the Glistener Elf, but not the Blighted Agents.
Well, Yaw's really banking on drawing another Snapcaster Mage then, which he did not draw.
He kind of has to rely on it, because he doesn't have enough removal to actually take care of these Blighted Agents if he doesn't. So he's only got the Lightning Bolt right now, and he has the Vendilion Click that can only block the Inkmoth Nexus, and he can Mana Leak some Pump, but Cow doesn't need the Pump here to have lethal on board.
I see. Geez, makes me think maybe, yeah, that was just a tough one.
Yeah, Yaw's in a tough spot. His lines here are going to be fairly complicated to try to stay in this. So what we're probably going to see is he's going to click on the draw step, uh, and that'll give him a blocker for Ink Moth Nexus. And then he's going to check to see if Cow draws Pump. If he does draw Pump, he's probably going to make him shuffle it away. If he doesn't, he'll let him keep it, and then he'll try to Lightning Bolt one of these Blighted Agents and hope that he draws a second removal, basically, which is, I think, about all he can do in this scenario. Is try
Would it be at all rational for Yaw to click himself to get another card draw in?
that might actually be a better line, is to click himself, because most of Cow's Pump is going to be +2/+2, which isn't, and on one card that means he's not taking anything out of Lightning Bolt range. So in theory, he could try to click himself, draw a second removal, and then have 2 Lightning Bolts or something and a jump block.
Oh, there he clicked himself. And discards Mana Leak. Or buries Mana Leak.
Yeah. So he's going to reveal the Mana Leak, which is basically useless with lethal on board anyway. And he's going to try to find a Lightning Bolt. It does have to be specifically Lightning Bolt or Push, because he's only got 2 mana open.
Oh, if only he had 1 more mana. Oh, that is painful to Yaw. That must really hurt.
Yeah, that is unfortunate.
Is it Static Caster? Costs 3.
Yeah, that's kind of why you want to keep a low curve, and it's also why he doesn't want more Creeping Tar Pits, is because he wants to be able to actually play his cards on time. And unfortunately, is it Static Caster plus Vendilion Click is a big ask, especially against a deck as fast as Infect can be.
Yeah, it looks like, let's see. Well, looks like Yaw at least, oh wait, there's an Inkmoth Nexus too, so...
Yeah, Yaw can shoot one of these Blighted Agents, but he can't shoot both. And he can't block either one because they're unblockable. So that's game. So yeah, that's going to take him to 10 poison, so Yaw's just going to scoop him up. And we're going to go to game 3. And that's what we're seeing here is, like I said when we first started, is that when you get these aggro versus aggro matchups, they kind of turn into control matchups in a way. And the first game we saw Yaw take over the board and Cow not being able to really do anything about it. So Yaw was able to just to force Cow to drive himself down and then Lightning Bolt his face. This time Cow was able to get on board. Yaw wasn't able to stop him. So Cow was able to just execute his game plan. And I think that's going to be the key in game 3 as well. So it looks like Cow is going to bring in and then take out the Kitchen Finks, just I guess to screw with Yaw.
Wait, was I talking when I said that stuff about Kitchen Finks?
Well, you weren't holding down your push to talk button, I guess.
Oh, that would be the case. Yeah, Kitchen Finks is one of my absolute favorite cards. Is extremely efficient. Net effect is it ends up gaining you 4 life, and you get both a 3/2 and a 2/1 body, all for 3 mana, which 2 of which can be green or white.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to see it in this game. Cow brought him in and then took him out, mostly to screw with Yaw, I think, whereas Yaw is just going to ship it back.
Oh yeah, it screwed with Yaw so much he disconnected.
Yeah, well, next level trolling. So we're going to wait a moment while Yaw's African connection finds its way back to the game. We'll be back in a second, I'm sure.
I will be back in a second as well.
Alright, so it looks like we did reconnect to the match. Ya got his connection sorted out. Thank you for bearing with us. And so I'm going to throw this back to the casters. Enjoy the rest of the match.
Yeah, let's try to avoid doing all that. So this is basically going to be the same as game two, except that Yaw's going to be on the play. Uh, that's going to give him the opportunity to get his shields up a little bit before Cow goes, but other than that, should be fairly fine. Looks like we might still have a bug or two in the system. All right, looking at Yaw's hands first, he's finally got the thing in the ice that his entire deck is based around, but which we didn't see in the first two games. He's got some cantrips, but all he's got for protection is this mana leak. So we'll see if he decides he's going to try to bank on this thing in the ice for protection, or if he tries to go. But it could be a lot faster and put him more on an aggro bent. Flipping over to Cow's hand real quick, we're seeing the Glistener Elf on turn one. He's got the Distortion Strike and the Blossoming Defense and the Pendlehaven for pump, which could make him fairly fast. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see both players keep here and see Cow try to just get this Glistener Elf down and his Ink Moth next egg down and try to pump in that way, and to see Yaw drop his thing in the ice and try to just protect it with these cantrips and maybe use the bounce feature to counter all of Cow's pump in a way that Cow can't actually stop it anyway. All right, well, looks like I've been talking on my own. Kelv isn't back yet, but he'll jump in when he's ready, I'm sure. In the meantime, we'll just go ahead and let the game proceed a little bit, and Kel can jump back in when he's ready to jump in.
Hey guys, I'm back.
And there he is. Speak of the devil, and he appears. And as expected, both players will keep their hands.
Maybe we'll actually get to see a thing in the ice this game. I am excited.
Yeah, Thing in the Ice opens up a lot of possibilities here. Just because it's the card the entire deck is named after, and which we didn't see in the first two games. And as mentioned in the pregame, the bounce interaction could be devastating against Cow's deck because it's not counterable. Not that Cow runs counters in the first place, but also it doesn't target, so Blossoming Defense at all doesn't actually protect against it.
Yeah, if y'all can flip a thing, it just resets Cow's entire board.
Right, so I wouldn't be surprised to see y'all play the thing in the ice, take some counters off it, and then save the actual flip to counter some of Cow's pump spells. Especially annoying because it can hit these Ink Moth next eye if he turns them into creatures and then swings, and then Yaw flips thing in the ice in response. That'll also take out some of the lands as well.
That is a very interesting consideration. Yaw is giving up on 7 damage a turn when he holds off and flipping it, so it's a tough call.
Right. We'll see how Yaw chooses to play it. I think he's going to pick his line based on what Cow does, but he does have that as an option available to him.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous. My deck doesn't even have the card it was named after.
Well, whose fault is that?
I think Wizards of the Coast. They're the ones who ban guards, right?
Well, that's fair enough. Bills put the blame on Morrow.
And not to mention whoever named decks. I think they had it out for the Eldrazi. Wait, that wasn't you, was it, Sudo?
What are you talking about?
You were not. You weren't the one who monikered all of the decks, were you?
No, that was McBenno.
Okay.
So Pendelhaven, as expected, will pump the Glistener Elf and swing in. This is probably Cow's choice because it's not vulnerable to mana leak, so he wants to get in underneath the shields. He's going to save the Distortion Strike, I think, until he's a little more confident that Yaw isn't holding up shields. That's because it's got rebound, so it's high value if he can get it cast. Interesting. So we're going to see so he has blue-red up here, which means his Terminate is not actually online yet.
Not till he gets that. Oh, now there we go. Drowned Catacomb. Nice draw.
Yeah, that'll put Terminate online. I don't know that he's necessarily going to want to play it because I think he's going to want to try to counter some pump instead of just playing directly into a Blossoming Defense, but at least it's available as an option now. And there's a Thing in the Ice on turn 3. Looks like he's going to be fine with taking his shields down this turn. He's got Spell Snare up for a Blighted Agent and the like, but this does mean that Distortion Strike and Blossoming Defense are still available.
Yeah, Distortion Strike can make that Glistener Elf untargetable for 2 turns in a row, and he can Pendelhaven that Glistener Elf both of those turns before Distortion Strike resolves. And plus he's got an Inkmoth Nexus, which can attack next turn, and that Blossoming Defense. So
Right, I think the line here is actually not to play out the Inkmoth Nexus, and instead just to play out like a basic forest, and then you can hold up both Blossoming Defense and Distortion Strike while y'all's shields are down, which is, I think, the play I would make. But we'll see what Cow actually decides to do in the face of this Thing in the Ice. And looks like my co-chair here is having a little trouble with Discord, so he'll probably reboot and jump back in with any luck.
hey guys, I'm back.
Don't let it happen again.
That is definitely not something I can assure. It just froze up on me.
Can't you even pretend?
Yes, boss. Now let's get back to the action, shall we?
If we must.
I want to have my turn at fighting Infect decks with Eldrazi. I think that's going to turn out well.
Yeah, and as expected, we'll see the Pendelhaven and the Distortion Strike to pump up this Glistener Elf while the shields are down. This is important because Distortion Strike's rebound lets it get double value if it resolves, which is something that Cow really wants to take advantage of. So it's not surprising to see him play it here. Well, Yaw is not really able to do anything about it. So for the record, the Glistener Elf is currently a 3/3 unblockable. And y'all will just taking them up to 5 poison.
The Distortion Strike is removed from game and ready to rebound next turn.
And there's a second thing in the ice. It could be interesting to see if Yaw chooses to play it out here, just because Thing in the Ice's ability doesn't bounce other things because they're all horrors. So we'll see if that's something he wants to try, if he just wants to try to keep shields up on just this one thing in the ice.
Yeah, he'll. I'm sure Yaw's planning to terminate the Glistener Elf next turn. So, question is whether he'll want to keep mana up to Spell Snare or Mana Leak to support the terminate, or whether he wants to get some more things in the ice.
Right. Well, he can see that Cal has 3 poison on turn, and at 5 poison, that means that basically any pump spell would be lethal. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him just try to hold shields up here, even though he can't actually flip Thing in the Ice yet.
Oh, well, there's that Creeping Tar Pit, which has to come into play tapped. Sure would be nice if Yaw had 4 mana available.
Yeah, well, that's, again, another reason why he doesn't play these Creeping Tar Pits. He really wants just the mana so he can play out his cards on a low curve.
Yeah,
It's not
because
a way around it, because it's not like he has any other lands in hand anyway.
now Yaw will have a lot of trouble both terminating and countering a spell unless it has converted mana cost of 2.
Right, he can hold up Terminate or Mana Leak, but not both in this scenario. So we'll see what he chooses to do. It looks like he's going to try to hold them up. And
Yeah, there's a Blossoming Defense, so he would have to Mana Leak, which prevents him from terminating.
Yeah. And so the Distortion Strike's going to rebound. This will take the Glistener Elf back up to a 3/3 unblockable again. We'll probably see the Mana Leak here, as just because he can't do anything about it. Yeah, as expected, there's Mana Leak. Cow doesn't have any effects in response, really. So he's just going to crack this Misty in response on his upkeep. But he's got no way to play for the Mana Leak, and he doesn't have Spell Pierce or anything. So this Mana Leak's just going to be a hard counter here. What was really interesting there was that he could have paid for that Mana Leak if he'd let the Pendelhaven trigger go, which may have been the method here. But then that means he's taken his shields down for a Terminate in response. Obviously, that's not an option here because just the mana considerations. But it's a potential line that could have been thought about.
Ooh, and Cal draws a Become Immense.
Yeah, that's going to be big game, especially since it'll either be lethal or eat this thing in the ice. So
and with a Blossoming Defense, given that Become Immense has Delve, Blossoming Defense is essentially free right before on the same turn.
Yeah, Cal has plenty of mana here, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him play out like an Inkmoth Nexus just in case. And then, Yaw is forced to block here, and then either this Become Immense or this Blossoming Defense are good enough to eat this thing in the ice. That Yaw can't flip. So we'll see what line he chooses to pick here, but it's obviously lethal if he doesn't block.
Did we see a land get played this turn?
Yeah, he just played the Inkmoth Nexus.
Oh, he has one in his hand as well.
Yeah, he has the 2, which is actually good synergy because they can pump each other. And yeah, so he's going to use his Blossoming Defense to pump his Glistener Elf, and that'll eat the thing in the ice. But it will at least A, not kill Yaw, and B, it means his Blossoming Defense is gone for the Terminate. So in theory, Yaw now has answers, and Cow's shields are down.
Let's now Yaw has a Snapcaster Mage, which means he'll be able to flash back his Mana Leak at any time.
Yeah, he's got Terminate in hand. He's also got Snapcaster and Mana Leak. It looks
He
like
could.
he might.
Okay, go ahead.
What I think we're going to see here is he's going to play out this Thing in the Ice as another ground blocker for Glistener Elf, and then save the Terminate for the Flying Inkmoth Nexus that can't be blocked by the Thing, is what I would expect the line to be here. But we'll see what Yaw chooses to do.
Absolutely. And if he terminates before using the Snapcaster Mage, he can even Snapcaster and terminate the next Nexus that pops up.
Right, that's going to be, yeah, if he terminates now, then he has Snap Terminate on the next turn, which could be big game if Cow doesn't draw protection.
Do you think Cow would possibly try to drop a Become Immense without a shield in his hand?
I think he saves the Become Immense until he either has protection or until Yaw's shields are down. I don't think he just throws it out there because it's basically game if he resolves it. And I think, if he just plays it on his Inkmoth Nexus and then gets terminated in response, that's a huge blowout in Yaw's favor. And it looks like we're going to have another disconnect from the African contestant. So we'll pause here for a little bit again. And yeah, that's basically it, is that when he disconnected, his game got desynced. So the game was just trying to resync Yaw's side. But it looks like we're back.
All right, and Yaw plays a Watery Grave to get this game started again.
Yep. One of the nice things about the Shock Lance is because your actual life doesn't really matter all that much. You could just pay the 2 mana, the 2 life guilt free to have the 5 mana up.
Yeah, unlike that first game in which Cow got swindled from the Lightning Bolt, although Cow didn't really have... I don't know. Cow might have been able to hold out another turn and then be less burny.
Maybe. But, Yaw had board control there. So he was just going to grind a Cow down if Cow didn't go for it. So I can see why Cow chose to try to go for the win in game 1 while Yaw's shields were down. He just didn't count on having the Lightning Bolt to face.
Right.
And here's the second Become Immense, which could be a big game because now he can, in theory, bait out some removal with the first Become Immense and then try to power through the second one. Yaw did choose to leave all his removal up and not play out the Thing in the Ice to block this Glistener Elf. So he is going to try to Snapcaster back some removal here.
Yeah, it's interesting to see Yaw Snapcastering some removal as opposed to just popping a Terminate.
Right. Well, probably what he's going to try to do here is he doesn't really have any removal outside of Mana Leak, possibly. to try to remove anything with the Snapcaster. So he's just going to play it out as a body, absorb this Glistener Elf, and then kill the Inkmoth Nexus in response to any pump attempt on Cal's part.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting.
And now I think Cal is thinking about whether he wants to play this Become Immense in response, because right now the trigger for Snapcaster Mage is still on the field, so the Mana Leak doesn't actually have flashback yet. Obviously has doesn't have a second counter in hand, but he does have this Terminate that'll almost certainly play in response if he tries to.
And yeah, we have not seen Cal has not seen a Terminate yet, so that might kind of take him by surprise. Although, do you think Cal would guess that y'all could have some? Well, Cal sees the deck list.
Yeah, Cal knows the deck list. It's all public, so he knows that Yaw has the potential for it, and he is gonna play this Become Immense while the Mana Leak triggers so that he can't counter it. But I mean, he's still got the Terminate, so that will almost certainly see in response. And he's also got this Pendelhaven up, so he can eat the Snapcaster Mage if Jaw tries to jump block it that way.
Yeah, Snapcaster Mage is just going to die to Glistener Elf if he blocks, but he doesn't want to take the...
What Jaw can do here is try to chump some damage and hope that he can get probably the Thing in the Ice down for a more permanent solution. And yeah, that's what we're going to see. Terminate on the Inkmoth Nexus and then Pendelhaven on the Glistener Elf. So the Inkmoth and the Snapcaster Mage will both die, and that'll buy Yaw another turn.
Although Cal does have two more cards in hand after this than Yaw, but it includes 2 more lands. So they have approximately the same number of threats in hand. We'll see. Ooh, and Yaw gets a Paya and Kira Nalar. Once Yaw gets a few more lands, that'll be tough. What do you think Yaw's going to do?
I don't think Pia and Kieran is going to be fast enough because he can't play it and then activate it in the same turn. And even if he could, Glistener Elf, the Pendelhaven protects a Glistener Elf from one shot. So it's going to be tricky. I think he's just going to play out this Thing in the Ice, which indeed he does. And that's going to serve as a ground blocker for this Glistener Elf. That does mean that he doesn't have really any answer to this Inkmoth Nexus. But Cow doesn't really have the Inkmoth Nexus and then pump it all in the same turn anyway. So the Inkmoth Nexus will get through, but it won't be lethal. And that'll give Yaw another turn to try to draw into either more mana for the Kieran or something.
Yeah, Cow is 1 card short of being able to delve for Become Immense. And he has 2 more lands that land flooded.
Yeah, but I mean, that's fine in this case because these fetch lands count as double mana for Become Immense anyway, which I think is the game plan he's on.
He could actually play a Become Immense right now if he wanted to.
Yeah, he can crack this fetch and then delve for Become Immense. I think he's afraid that Yaw might have another Terminate, so he's just going to let it go this time, and he's probably going to try it next turn if he can.
Yeah, Yaw has definitely is in lethal, so if he had cracked it, Become Immense, it would have been game.
Yeah, that Yaw wouldn't have had any answers to Become Immense there, so that would have been game. But I think Cal was afraid of Terminates or Mana Leaks, so he didn't want to risk it there.
Oh, and there's a Dispel. There's a Dispel which would have countered it.
Yeah, now Yaw has shields. So, I mean, Cal was afraid of the counterspell, so he didn't go for it. But the fact that he didn't go for it there means that Yaw had the time to draw into a counterspell, and we'll see if that costs him.
Y'all could actually even play Paya and Kieran and keep mana open for a Dispel.
Well, yeah, 1 mana counterspells are pretty neat, especially since all of Cow's Pump is instant speed, so this Dispel is always going to be good.
Yeah, and I think that might be necessary, even though he doesn't have enough mana to ping anything. He'll at least be able to get some Ornithopters up that can block.
Yeah, it's chump blockers, and this Thing in the Ice means that he can get the P and Kieran down for some chump blockers, then flip Thing, bounces P and Kieran, and then replay it for more chump blockers.
Yeah, he needs to draw 2 more instants or sorceries to be able to flip his thing, though.
I mean, P and Kieran isn't coming down because he only has 1 red anyway, but I mean, it is a theoretical line.
What do you think about popping the Creeping Tar Pit to block Listener Elf?
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, it's a line he can play since he's got the spare mana, and I don't think that activating the Creeping Tar Pit as an attacker is something that y'all is going to be interested in. But it is a theoretical line. I think he's just going to be happy with absorbing it on this Thing in the Ice for the time being. And yeah, he's going to chump with the Thing in the Ice to block this Glistener Elf. Pendelhaven's going to pump the Inkmoth Nexus, and that'll take up to 8 poison. So he's got lethal on board with this Inkmoth Nexus and Pendelhaven combo that he can play without activating this, allowing a target for this Dispel. And he's also going to keep Yaw short on red mana, or he's going to draws a second P and Kieran, which means he's still going to be 1 red mana short of actually playing out any of these P and Kierans. So Cow is going to again have lethal here, and now he's got the Vines of Vastwood as for protection. So Cow is going to be, or Yaw is going to be in some trouble here trying to deal with this Inkmoth Nexus. As far as I can tell, he actually has no answers. So choosing not to play as Become Immense there when it would have been lethal is not actually going to hurt Cow because Yaw just doesn't have any ability to do anything about it. So it's a slower line, but a safer line as it turned out, which I guess works out well in Cow's favor. And yep, Yaw's going to offer up the GG, and that's game. He had some bad luck game 1, but Cow's going to take game 2 and game 3 to take the match.
Oops, I forgot to hit my control key again. I was saying Yaw's deck was a lot slower the 3rd game than it was the last 2 games, and that did cost him, unfortunately.
Yeah. Cow was forced to play a lot slower here just because he didn't have all of the shields up that he really wanted. So he was trying to play around Cow's removal, or Yaw's removal, and Yaw's counter spells. Jaw's deck, unfortunately, did not give him as much of the removal as he would have needed, and it also didn't give him the second red that he would have needed to play these P and Kieran's out for chump blocking. So he was just forced to rely on using these Things in the Ice to try to hold down the fort until they could draw into something, and he just didn't. And that's part of the trouble with Infect, right? Because Cow didn't get the explosive start that he needed, but because he's forcing Yaw to play on 10 effective life, Yaw just didn't have the time to draw out of it that he would have had if Cow was playing a more standard aggro deck.
Yeah, Yaw really needed to have something fast going out of the box because this Infect has such a quick clock.
All right.
Yeah, and I do agree with what Yaw and Cow are saying in chat. It would maybe have been better to save the Snapcaster Mage just a little bit longer until he could have used it to actually terminate 2 of Cow's creatures.
Yeah, I think he was afraid of the pump, so he wanted to get the Snapcaster Mage down fast so that he could try to jump this Glistener Elf. But playing it that way meant that Cow just ate the Glistener Elf or just ate the Snapcaster Mage with Glistener Elf plus Pendelhaven, and it meant that he couldn't get extra value out of his Terminates that might have been able to do something about this Inkmoth Nexus. But at the same time, I don't think that y'all wanted to necessarily wait for that, because the longer he waits on that Snapcaster Mage to try to rebuy Terminate, the longer Cow has to try to draw into his Apostle's Blessings, his Finds of Vastwood, his Blossoming Defense, and all that. So,
Yeah.
so this game just had a lot of tough decisions, and there are a number of lines that both players could have tried alternate to their main lines, and I think you could branch off into Eternity if you really wanted to with the analysis here.
Yeah, who do you think had the advantage starting off in this matchup?
This was always going to be a rough one to try to predict, just because Cow's deck has so much resilience, as we saw here. We didn't see the explosive Infect starts. Instead, we saw Cow win off the sort of Inkmoth Nexus, Pendelhaven, and Protection spell plan, and just kind of grinding out all of y'all's removal over the long run, rather than explosively going off on turn 2 or turn 3. And in a game like that, it really just comes down to whether Cow gets more protection than Yaw draws interaction. So I think that Infect had the advantage this whole matchup, but it really was going to be a draw-dependent matchup this whole time.
All right, well, thank you very much to our casters.
Yeah, and that's what we saw. It was very draw-dependent for both players in all 3 games. It's a shame Yaw didn't ever get the chance to flip his thing in the ice.
Yeah, but I mean, you just can't predict that sort of thing. He was just in a position where he needed to keep his shields up at all times, because if he ever goes down, Cow has the ability to just play all his pump spells out. So he kind of has to hold back and play conservative, but that means that this thing in the ice never got the chance to really do its thing either.
Yeah,
I think we're going to allow Sens to sign us off, since I think he's been trying for the last few minutes.
All right, well,
Sounds
thank
good.
you very much.
Great game. Thanks for commenting.
Thank you very much to the casters and the players. This was a great match. Went all 3 games. We are going to have another match coming up in just a little bit. Probably just a few minutes, just to get that all straightened out. So the stream will be going offline, but we will be back later with another match. So thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you later.